Okay, great. Thanks everybody for coming today. I know it's a super rainy day, so more props to you for coming out because I know it's hard in the rain. Makes you even more so want to procrastinate and not come to something like this. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thanks for the sign-in sheet. I'll grab that. All right, we're here today to talk about procrastination, how to avoid some of the pitfalls of doing it, and also how to manage our time better. So I want to start off with, why do you all do it? Why do you all procrastinate? Why do we all procrastinate? What ideas do you have? What happens in your life? What do you think?
Trying to push off something to later.
Trying to push something off till later, okay.
Yeah, I just be like, I'll do it later.
You just think, I'll just do it later? Okay. Here's the tricky part about procrastination. It's very hard to understand it because a lot of times we have an emotional reaction to it, not a logical reaction. So we're not actually thinking about it, but we're just reacting to it. And that's my first point here, is that emotional hijacking happens, where basically your emotions, the fact that you're anxious about it, you're scared about what you have to do, you're worried about it, makes you just jump over your thinking, which is your prefrontal cortex, to use the technical term. So instead of planning, your mind just immediately jumps to, let me go with impulse. What do I want to do? What feels good? And so we end up doing that instead. And here's a layman's, a normal person's explanation. It's just that our anxiety makes us want to find some easier way out, so we don't have to deal with the hard thing that we're supposed to do. The funny part is that the dread of doing the task, the fear of doing it, sometimes is a lot worse than actually doing it. Have you ever noticed that? Where once you get started on a project, or once you get started on a paper, or you start studying, it ends up being not as hard as you thought. Anybody feel that way? Sometimes at least? Yeah? So that's the thing. A lot of it is psychological, which I want to make sure you understand today. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not different from other people. Everybody goes through this. But a lot of it is psychological. It's a way of thinking as opposed to you physically not being able to do something, right? So that's not the case. So it is something you can overcome. Let's go over some specific logical reasons why. This is breaking it down and trying to understand it so that we can get somewhere with it. And we will get somewhere with it today during this 1-hour workshop. We're going to talk about the whys, and then we're going to address how do we get better at them. So here are some of the whys. The first one is a fear of failure. You know, you're about to do a project, or you're assigned an essay and you have to get it done by the end of the semester. Sometimes there's a fear of failure. You're already thinking, wow, I don't think I'm going to do very well. Has anybody felt that way? Where you're scared of the outcome, of what's going to happen? Or gosh, I don't want to study for the test because I know I'll probably fail it, or I know I'm going to get a C-, or I bet I'm not going to pass this exam. That fear causes you to say, hey, I'm just going to wait. Let me do something else more fun, or more attractive, or more interesting, instead of what I need to do. The second thing is that sometimes it's just flat out not enjoyable. It's not fun to do. We don't enjoy writing or writing papers. We don't enjoy reading textbooks, right? We don't enjoy studying for something. The third thing is that there are other distractions that come into play, and this happens a lot in today's society, right? What's the big thing we have? Our phones. Our phones are connected to everything. And because of that, it's going to ping you, it's going to alert you, it's going to notify you, it's going to tell you what to do with your life, and you feel like you're at the mercy of your phone instead of your phone being at the mercy of you being in charge. So today, especially in today's world, these distractions can really get to you. Finally, you've got this abstract future idea. The fact that there is lack of planning. And it jumps back to that first slide I showed you, where because our emotions are really high and we're either scared or fearful or don't like what we're about to do, then the emotions are so high that we jump over the planning stage and we end up not planning. That means we're not considering what's going to happen if we don't get it done. So now I'm going to go over some of the things that relate to these. Fear of failure is kind of the concept of expectancy. What do I expect to happen? It not being enjoyable is sort of like a value. It's not valuing what's going to happen enough. Other distractions is kind of like impulsiveness, right? We feel impulsive about something, we're going to jump in on it, we're going to do whatever is most interesting to us, we're going to see the latest Facebook post or check out the latest Instagram thing or the latest video out there on YouTube. The next one is the abstract future, and this is where we delay. We tend to just push things back further and further. And the farther away it is, like if it's the end of semester essay, the worse off we are. The more we feel like, oh, I'll just wait, because it's so far away. Now that we kind of positioned ourselves to understand what those 4 things are, I wanted to make a very kind of mathematical thing, a formula, just so we can see it. Very simple formula. But basically what procrastination is this idea of motivation being 4 pieces. On the first part, motivation is good when you have a good expectancy. If you expect to do well on a test or a quiz or an essay. Times the value. If you feel like there is value to it. How many of you know what your major is? Okay, what is your, oh, everyone does. So what's your major? Good.
Clinical lab.
Clinical lab science, right? Okay. And how about your major?
Psychology.
Psychology? Okay. And how about you, Nicholas? What's yours?
Nursing.
Nursing. All right, great. So you all have your majors identified. So at this point in your college career, you should already hopefully see the value between the classes you're taking and the end goal, the graduation, right? Being able to possibly even work in the area that you're studying. So that's where the value hopefully is tighter. But when you were a freshman, wasn't it a little bit harder to see the value of a particular class? Gee, why am I taking calculus? How is this going to help me in life? Why am I taking psychology? That's not going to help me because I'm doing, clinical lab science. There are certain things where a class may feel outside of the value that you want to get because it doesn't feel like it relates to your goals. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. On the bottom, the denominator, to use the mathematical term, these are things that are going to take away from motivation. If you have a lot of impulsiveness, that's going to make you less motivated. If you have a lot of delay, meaning the thing that you have to do is far, far away, that's going to take away motivation. Going to jump into each one of these and talk about them quickly. The first one is the expectancy, the idea of, am I going to do well? I have a worry about doing badly. And that's that last one there, the sad face. What happens if we think that we're not going to do well is we have a learned helplessness. We come to realize that, gosh, we're just helpless. No matter what we do, we're not going to do well. And that's obviously not a good feeling. That's not where you want to be. It can end up causing you to give up early, maybe even have low self-esteem, not feeling good about yourself, and at a bad situation might lead to some depression. So these are all things we don't want, of course. I'm going to talk about the bad stuff, and then we'll get into the good stuff as to what we can do. The second area that might be negative for us is this idea of the valuableness of what we're doing. So again, how do we think about the essay we have to do or the project we have to work on? If it's seen as not enjoyable, that's going to hurt us. If it's seen as not meaningful, right, not connected to your major, not connected to your life and your career, that's going to be bad. And not connected to your larger goals, again, a negative thing. The third aspect is impulsiveness. And this can also hurt us a lot. When we already have some anxiety about doing something, if we are impulsive, if we're an impulsive person, that's going to make it even worse. Because a normal reaction would be to start something early. Oh wow, I've got a term paper and it's going to be 30 pages long. It's huge. It's not a small task. So I better get started early. But the impulsive person's reaction is to say, hey, I want to block it out of my mind for as long as I can because I am so worried about it. I don't even want to, thank goodness it's 7 weeks away or 13 weeks away so I can ignore it for the first 10 or 11 or 12 weeks. So this idea of the impulsiveness of someone can actually hurt you even more. The fourth thing that I mentioned was the delay. And again, as I've mentioned already, the farther away it is, the worse off the effect is. Because there's no immediate pressure to get anything done, so a lot of times we think, oh, nothing immediate, nothing's due tomorrow. I don't have to do it right now. So I'll just push it off and push it off and push it off. The other problem with things that are far away is it's abstract. It's like a foggy future, something out there in the distance that I can't put my mind around. Whereas things that are happening right now are concrete, and we think, oh, I can do this right now, so I'm going to just jump in to do the concrete thing instead of focusing on the abstract. So these are, if you will, sort of the negative things. These are the motivation killers, is what I like to call them. These are things that are going to really hurt you in motivation. First one being, again, the impulsiveness. Got to have it now, got to do it now. The failing to plan, feeling like, oh, it's so far away, I don't need to plan. Disliking the work, feeling like you're not connected to the work. And finally, being close to a lot of temptations, things that can get in the way. So what I want you to do as your first exercise is just take a look at these 4 ideas. Check off the one that you feel, or could be more than one, of the ideas that you feel get in your way when you're trying to get your work done. And then ask yourself, why? Why is this causing me to stumble? What about it is so interesting or so enticing, so exciting that I end up doing it instead of what I should be doing? Go ahead and spend a few minutes doing that, and then we'll talk about it. All right, everybody's written something down, right? Okay, let's have a discussion about it. I can tell you for me, I usually fall to this, the proximity, the closeness to temptations. So many other things to do, so many other things to see. Personal interests that I have. That's what I tend to end up doing, is going into my personal interests instead of doing the work that I need to get done. So for me, it's about, gosh, just one click of the mouse and I can be looking at something else, shopping for something, or watching a video. How about for you all? What's your temptation? What's the thing that causes you to stumble a little bit when it comes to procrastination?
For me, I would say proximity to temptations, simply because, classes are here, DJRs right here, if I get hungry, that's that.
So you've got a lot of options for food and for snacking and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I understand. Definitely. What else?
And then I would say failing to plan. I have a habit. I plan, but then when it's time to do it, I'd be like, nah, I'll do that later.
You're saying you actually do try to plan?
Yeah, but it does not work.
It doesn't work. So you write out a schedule of what you want to do, but it's just executing the schedule that becomes hard?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the moment that you're trying to execute, what happens? Do you go off to some other thing? Okay. All right. Who else wants to share? Tanaya, do you have something you want to share? I know you do. Impulsiveness. Okay. And why is that? What happens for you?
Well, I like, when it comes to me and psychology and this work I do, I like to start my work ahead of time and get done afterwards. And then I just study for that, and then sometimes, and then be like, the second will be failing to plan.
Mm-hmm. The second will be failing to plan? Okay. And how about for you, Nicholas? What do you tend to do when it comes to procrastination?
One could be, for me, be proximity temptations, like notifications on my phone might distract me from delaying something that I not like to do, like maybe writing a paper or reading a research article, so.
Right. So for you, it is the phone, it's the notifications, it's the alerts that are kind of distracting you from doing your work, your research, your writing, your whatever you're trying to do. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Well, thanks for being honest. I know it's hard to do that sometimes. Luckily, we're in a small group and we can do that hopefully safely here. So that was motivation killers. And I wanted to talk very briefly about why temptation is stronger nowadays Because I really do feel like, I think all of you said temptations in different ways, different forms of temptation. And I want to talk about it a little bit more because I think it's really essential to understand that before we get into the solutions. And I'm doing this because you all are so young, you might need a little bit of a history lesson. So in 1911, we had the advent of film. Okay? Movies started being made in 1911. And obviously nowadays that takes on even greater forms because movies are available on our phones. They're available anywhere you are. You don't have to go to a movie theater to watch movies. And then there was TV in 1955. That was a big deal too. The invention of television, again, has taken on crazy proportions when you think about Netflix and CBS online access and all these networks that have access channels. ESPN, for those who are into sports, can be an addictive thing that you can watch almost 24/7. 1975, video games were invented. And again, in today's version of video games, it's even more addictive. Has anybody heard of World of Warcraft or been a part of World of Warcraft? That's an online virtual game that has almost like limitless capabilities to roam different lands and to become different people and avatars. Some people have gotten caught into that virtual world and live more in that world as an avatar than they do in real life. People who play the game 12, 14 hours a day. So this is a very scary thing. 1983, the internet, or the World Wide Web, as it was called back then, which is why it's WWW. So again, brief history lesson. That was invented in 1983, where it was actually connected together amongst all the universities that were researching it. And that, of course, has begotten today's version of temptation. Starting with Netflix, started in 1997. Now it offers all this content, television, movies, anything you can think of when it comes to multimedia. 2004, Facebook. Of course, now we have all the posts and you have to be notified and you have to watch your friends and see what's going on and get reposted. You've got Instagram and all these things. And you've also got now TikTok in 2017, which came worldwide. Anybody use TikTok? Okay, so that's like a latest thing as well, where it's incorporating music with video as well. Just all these great ways to be a diversion to what you do. So I'm not saying any of these things are bad per se, but you really have to understand how to limit when you do them versus when you do your work. There has to be a separation between these things and the work that you're trying to get done. The other thing that's interesting to note is that the variable patterns of reinforcement are what are really addictive. When I say variable patterns of reinforcement, what I mean is sometimes you'll click on something and, like, I'll give you an example for me. Like, I really like board games. Okay, I love to buy board games used because it's so much cheaper. So I'm in a Facebook group, which is board games for sale. So I'm clicking on that every day, every hour. I'm just update, update. Because I want to see, once there's a game out there that's a good game that I really want, I need to get it right then. Because if I don't do it, somebody's going to buy it in like 20 minutes. So again, sometimes, in fact, most of the time, nothing is for sale. But the few times where I clicked and I got that reinforcement of, oh, there's a game that you want, it's on sale for $10. Oh my gosh, that retails for $50. Man, I got to get that. That little reinforcement makes you go back again and again and want to click every hour, every half hour, every 10 minutes. Because only once in a while you're getting that positive reinforcement. And isn't that true of a lot of these things that we do, where when you're clicking on something, you're checking on something, 90% of the time you don't care about this person's post. It's just whatever. But the 10% of the time where it's hilarious, or it's information you really did need, or you have to get an update on the party and there's a change that you need to know about, that's like 10% of the time where it's important. But the 90% is what gets you. You spend all that 90% of your time on stuff that does not matter. So that's why it's so addictive. I'm just trying to explain to you why it can be a procrastinator, have a procrastinator effect. So be very careful of that addictive nature of only once in a while I get that reinforcement. I get that feel-good response. That's what drives you to keep going back to it. So be very careful. Again, temptations then and now. Back in the day, it was, do you want to pick that apple off the tree? Sure does look good. And nowadays, it's, hey, not only, do you want that apple, but it's candy coated, it's got caramel, it's got the drizzle on it, it looks appealing, it's got coconut flakes, M&Ms on it, all kinds of good stuff. And there are so many varieties of it, and they're all right there in your hand. So be very, very careful. Listen, I'm spending a lot of time on this because it's very important that you understand that don't let your phone use you. You use your phone. Okay? It's such a simple concept, but if I don't make it very absolutely clear to you that temptations are everywhere, sometimes it won't sink in. And I really want it to sink in for you because it's very, very meaningful. If you're able to put down that phone, that's going to save you a lot of procrastination headaches. It's not just the phone. It could be a television. It could be video games. It could be something I haven't mentioned. That's something that you just really enjoy. Shopping, knitting, board games. I don't care what it is. It could be something out there that's taking away from your focus. Let's talk about solutions because we spent enough time about the problems. First solution I want to talk about is the expectancy solutions. Expectancy is where you expect to either do well or do poorly in something. So instead of expecting negativity, let's try to create some optimism. How do we create optimism? I'm going to show you now. And you have on your notes pages, you have a little area of what you will do. You can use that for notes for this as well. So I'm going to talk about each one. The first one is optimism. You're welcome to take notes as we go along, or not. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. There's 3 things I want to talk about for each of these areas. The first one, optimism. First idea, first solution to it is the success spiral idea. And I'll tell you what it is so you can understand, because only those words, success spiral, are on your sheet. So what a success spiral is breaking up a big task into smaller tasks and then allowing yourself to actually have an achievable goal. Let's take the essay writing, for example. You've got the big semester-long essay. It's got to be done. It's 30 pages. It's like super hard. But you have to break it down into small tasks. And you decide what those tasks are. Maybe your first task is simply to think about what your theme is. That might only be a 20, 30-minute task. If you just set aside 30 minutes to think about a theme, do you see how that's a very achievable thing? Once you're able to succeed, we're right here at the bottom of the spiral. Once you're able to succeed in figuring out your theme, then you have your other steps that are, again, equally achievable. Your next step might be go look online for articles about my theme. Just look at them, just print them out, or just save them to a Word doc or a PDF. Don't read them, just look for them. Do you see how that's a small step up? I don't want you to do the big shebang. I don't want you to spend 4 hours looking up articles and reading every one of them and giving a synopsis of each one. That's not what I'm asking. I want you to find a small success spiral, something small that you can do that will be just one step further than what you've already done. So break it up into as small pieces as you possibly can. Does that make sense to everybody? And then when you have success, guess what happens to your psychology, your psyche, your mental thought process? Is it going to be negative or is it going to be optimistic? You're going to be more optimistic, right? Because you say, hey, I was able to successfully figure out my theme. I was able to successfully find 3 articles. I was then successfully able to read the articles. Do you see that? So each step is just an n+1. It's like whatever you're doing is the n+1, just a small step forward. So that is the goal of the success spiral. I'm going to use my special powers to close the door. And the second thing is vicarious victory. This is another idea how you can create optimism in yourself. The vicarious victory, vicarious, does anybody know what that means? Vicarious? To live vicariously is to live through somebody else's experience. So the vicarious victory means, in this case, they're soccer fans, getting all into their soccer teams, right? So they're going nuts because they live through their team. If their team wins, they win, or they feel like they win. Now, let's set it up in the example of a student. What would be a vicarious victory for you? In this case, it would be more like setting up a support group or a group of people who also are achieving the same thing you are trying to achieve, and they have already done some steps towards victory. Maybe it's even someone a year ahead of you or a semester ahead of you who can tell you, oh yeah, I took that class and I was able to complete that essay, and here's how I did it. They give you the success story, and you live as if you were part of their success. Other things might be a motivational article or a motivational book if you read books, but something to motivate you to say, wow, I can do it. Maybe it's an inspirational story about someone who was able to graduate in your major. Another one could be, I think this is a very, very good one, TED Talks. Anybody heard of TED Talks? Right? TED. It's a very famous set of talks, typically 15 minutes or shorter. I think they have a requirement that it's 15 minutes or shorter, but some people have gone as high as 18 or 19 minutes. Maybe the official, maximum is 20 minutes. Regardless, in 20 minutes or less, you can be inspired by somebody. You can do that with a famous person, Oprah Winfrey, Denzel Washington, I don't care who it is. Whoever that person is who you look up to or admire, you could get a TED Talk on them, probably find someone who's either them or very similar to them and be inspired by their stories. Alternatively, you could do it by topic, right? So it could be about, how I succeeded in school, how I overcame procrastination, how I could create success out of failure. So the topical TED Talk could also be inspiring for your situation. And it might be different for every one of you. Does that make sense, how the vicarious victory works? All right. The third thing that I would recommend is the wish fulfillment. Wish fulfillment is where you position yourself, you sort of close your eyes and you mentally think about where you want to be at the end of your journey. Maybe you're struggling so much, you just want to see the end of your journey being, making it to June, making it to the end of this year. Hopefully yours is bigger than that, and it's, hey, I want to get to graduating from WSSU. Maybe it's even bigger than that. It's, I want to graduate and get this kind of job in this kind of industry, in this region, right? So this wish fulfillment, the way it works is you close your eyes, you dream of it, you think of it, you think of what you would be, how you would look, how you would dress, how you would feel about yourself to be in that spot, that future you. And then, I'm going to hit you up with another image. It's all about minding the gap. Has anybody been to London or England? That's a special thing, right? International travel. We got a study abroad program. I've been to England, I've been to London. It's a beautiful place. And one of the things they always do is they've got the subway system. And they always say, mind the gap. Because there is a gap between where you walk and then where you get onto the actual subway. There is a gap of about a foot. You don't want to fall in there, right? Not a good thing. So they always say mind the gap, a very famous term, very famous. In this case, mind the gap means think about where you want to be and then look at the gap between where you are today and where you want to be. When you look at that gap, you're going to say, you know what? I want to be the future me. I don't want to be the me of right now. I want to be the future me. Let me get there. And when you compare where you want to be and what you look like over in that future state, and you look at where you are, that's going to motivate you with optimism that you can get there. Everyone understand how that works? All right. Why don't we stop there for a minute? I'm going to actually have you do this exercise. Which of these three makes sense to you? And what would you want to try to commit to doing? Let me give this a try within the next week, within the next few days. go ahead and spend just a quick minute or two doing that exercise now for the first one. And just to kind of remind you that when you take this home, and you're welcome to take this home, this is the you time. This is the time for you to develop yourself. So don't be afraid to spend time tonight, tomorrow, reflecting on some of this stuff, right? This is your reflection time. Nobody says you can only think about this during this session. Feel free to take it home and spend 30 minutes thinking about this stuff. You can generate so many more ideas. So I welcome you to do that at home. But since we're in a time restricted situation here, let's continue on. Does anyone want to share before we continue? Does anyone want to share about what you had in terms of your ideas, what you're thinking about? Either something I said or something you've written down that might be the same or different. Phil, please feel free to share a little bit. Anybody want to share?
Well, I'll say like for a success spiral, I'll try to say like I'm studying for a test, try to break up the content, even though it can be complex, to like make a certain plan, just break it up into multiple days and several weeks to make it more doable and not a daunting task.
Mm-hmm. Good, good. So you'll try the success spiral idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah, believe me, if you just make that list with little check boxes as you're going through and checking them off, man, it feels really good to check off each one of those things as you go through. And if you have like a 10-step process, wow, you feel like whether it's truly 30% or not, if you checked off 3 of them, you feel like you're making quite a bit of progress. And again, that creates optimism, that creates motivation. You're trying to get yourself on the right path, okay? So that's a great idea. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate that. Let's go on to the next one. The next one is, under the idea of value, reconfiguring it into feeling like it is now purpose. That I have a purpose to what I do. Again, this is where we felt like, oh, you know, what I'm doing is not valuable, it's not enjoyable, I don't like it, and I don't see why I have to do it. Let's try to create purpose instead. How will we do this? The very first advice I have for you is to connect tasks to your long-term goals. You have to, again, sort of close your eyes and envision, if you will, what your goal is. If it is, in fact, to graduate from college, you've got to then figure out how this one task, writing an essay, studying for my paper, or studying for my quiz, or studying for my test, is going to connect to that larger purpose. You have to keep that larger purpose in mind and understand that everything you are doing, each of these smaller tasks, leads up to that. And if you fail at the smaller tasks, you cannot achieve the larger goal. So again, think about that goal. Whatever is meaningful for you, you've got to focus on that. The second thing I would say is rewarding yourself at the end, not during, not before, but rewarding yourself at the end. And I put this down as a little loyalty rewards card because that's kind of the concept I'm looking for, is after you've done these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 steps, at the end of having done all that, now you can reward yourself. So you may want to make a list. You might want to say, hey, going on a small shopping spree, I can spend X amount of money that I have available. I don't care if it's $20 or $100. Whatever your budget allows for, you have a small splurge within whatever that means for you, right? Or it could be, hey, I'm going to go out and have a night out with the girls or the guys or whomever. Or I'm going to go see a movie that I want to watch. Something where you're actually taking time out or money out or pampering yourself in some way. But step 1 is make that list. What could you reward yourself with? That's not too expensive, doesn't take too much time, all those kinds of things. Maybe it's a small reward, maybe it's, something littler. It doesn't matter. As long as you make a list of things that you can reward yourself with, then you have, again, another goal to achieve, something that's going to be a positive thing when you get to the end. So yes, you can connect to the larger goal. That's great if you can do that. Sometimes that's very hard to do. So instead, we need to give ourselves another smaller goal to achieve. That's where you come up with rewards. The third one is going to be framing goals. This is positioning your goals in a different way. A lot of times we position our goals as what I'm trying to avoid. gosh, I need to study for this test because I don't want to fail, right? Or gosh, I'm going to write this paper and I hope I don't get a D. Or I hope I don't, I hope there's not too many markings on my paper. That's not the right way to look at it. We want to frame it as achievements, positive statements. So instead of that, you want to say, I'm going to study so that I can excel in this test, so that I can pass this test. I'm going to start writing on my paper. I'm going to start looking at my themes. I'm going to start exploring articles so that my paper can be as good as it can be, so that I can put my best foot forward, so I can get better at writing. Do you see all those words I'm using? Good, better, achieve, accomplish, do. Those are the words you have to use. It sounds really silly, but semantics, words, have a lot of meaning. When we use positive words in our life, we speak positivity over ourselves. When we use negative words, they speak negativity over ourselves. So this is a way of saying, hey, I'm going to think in terms of and speak in terms of positivity, not negativity. Does everyone understand these three ideas? All right, I want to spend, again, very short 1 minute time flip it over to the next page and look at the value to purpose page and put in something that you want to try again in this week, or at least you would consider trying this week. What speaks to you? Again, very brief, 1 minute. You can spend a lot more time on your own at home. All right, that's a super short 1 minute just to get you started. Could somebody share, please? And once you share, we can move on to the next slide. So, somebody want to share something?
I said I want to try to start rewarding myself after studying for a test or after making a A.
Okay, good. You're going to start rewarding yourself after you do something good. Yes, that's perfect. Doesn't that sound good? You just created something good in your life that wasn't there before. That's all you did, is you added good stuff. Isn't that great? You're rewarding yourself now and you didn't do it before. Way to go. The key being, make that list so your mouth can start watering, like, yeah, I want those things, but I am not going to get them until I ... do well on my test, finish my paper, blah, blah, blah. So you're giving yourself a reward, but you're putting it out for the future. All right, excellent. Let's move on to the next one, which is in the category of impulsive. Instead of that, what do we want to be? We want to be focused. The very first example here is the most difficult but the most exciting, and it is throw away the key. What do you think I mean by throw away the key? That means instead of being able to use your phone, what do you do with your phone?
Turn it on.
Turn it off. Lock it up, putting it in another room. Not even be anywhere close to it. So that is throwing away the key. And the concept here is back in 1066, the year 1066, 1,000 years ago, William the Conqueror in Normandy in France, today modern day France, went to try to conquer England. I don't know why I have so many European examples. Sorry about that. No history majors in the building. But regardless, William the Conqueror, he actually had his soldiers land. It was waterway, so they would land onto England, get onto dry land from the water. And then he actually burned his ships behind him. Why would he do that? That's crazy. Why would you do that? To say what? To say what to his people? It's either go forward or go home. We're either going to conquer this place or we're going to die trying, right? So this William the Conqueror concept of, hey, we're going all out, we are not going backwards, is the same concept here. I am putting my phone off and I'm leaving it behind. And I'm just going to focus on this for the next, 45 minutes, 2 hours, the whole night, whatever it is. Man, it takes a lot of, strength to do that. But if you can take that throw away the key concept and do it, you will have changed your life, believe me, for the better when it comes to the students, your achievements academically, even socially. And to get real modern day with it, there is an app called Flipped, which allows you to, once you've downloaded it to your phone, to turn off your phone automatically for a certain amount of time. And there's other things it can do that are not as drastic, not as crazy as that. But Flipped is one of several that will allow you to understand how you're using social media and pull it back a little, rein it in. And in the case of Flipped, which is why I mentioned it, it will actually turn off your phone for you for a certain amount of time that you tell it to do. So it can do exactly what I'm saying. It will be the 2020 version of dropping the keys in the river. The second idea I want to talk about is that work cannot be play. Now, I've got my own personal example here. In my bedroom, you know what I've got in my bedroom is a bed. I've got a bed in my bedroom, but you know what I do not have in my bedroom? What do you think I do not have in my bedroom?
Your office space?
Yeah. I don't have a television is where I was going with. So many people nowadays have a television in the place where they sleep. And I know this is different for y'all because you might be in a dorm room, you might be in a one-bedroom apartment or a studio, you don't have an option. But for those of us who are, adults or grown up or whatnot, I could choose to have a TV in my room, but I choose not to because I don't want that distraction. My sleep life should be separated from my entertainment life. Do you see that? And because of that, when I don't allow it to cross the line, when I go to my bedroom, I'm ready to go to sleep. And my mind is at peace because I'm not thinking about turning it on and seeing what the latest basketball game, what's going on. How many points did LeBron score tonight? I'm not worried about that because I don't have an option, because I didn't give myself an option. I threw away the key already. I didn't allow the TV into the room. In the same way, you have to figure out what workspaces have to be carved out that are separate from your play spaces. All right? So again, I'm using that analogy. So for you, it's going to be something different. Maybe it is that desk at home where you just allocate that for work time. Or if you come to this building, which is great for getting your work done because it's a study area, maybe you just make it a rule that you're never going to do personal fun stuff. Watching personal videos, checking out Instagram, checking on your Facebook. If you're in Hill Hall, if you're in this building, you're just going to make it your own personal rule. I'm not going to cross that line. I'm not going to do personal stuff in a workspace. Now throw away what happened in the past. Starting today, that will be your mantra. Does that make sense? Because if you separate the two, now you're protecting yourself. When you get into that space, maybe it's the desk at home, maybe it's Hill Hall floor number 2, wherever it is, you're now saying, hey, this is untouchable. I'm not letting the personal stuff get in my way. This is my time to get things done, and I'm not going to let that distract me. So you have to put the do not cross line on that. The third one is make temptations unappealing. This is also a personal example for me. Sadly, I had a few cavities last time I went to the dentist, which was last month. And my dentist said, you know what, have you been drinking more sugary drinks? And I said, yeah. I actually did drink some more sugary drinks. And she said, no wonder you have 3 cavities. I said, oh my goodness. She said, yep, that's what happens. When you drink sugary drinks, they get all in your teeth and they stay there and they stick there. Especially for an older person like me, right? I don't have the youth that you all have. So I had to cut back my drinking. So I haven't had sugary drinks in about a month. Not because I don't want them. I sure do want them. They are tempting, but I choose not to drink it. How do I choose not to drink it? I make the temptation unappealing. Un means not. I'm going to make it not appealing. How do I do that? Every time I think about a soda, this is what I think about. Ooh, you don't even want to look at that picture, right? Oh. So if I think about that every time I think of a soda, do you think I'm going to drink more soda or less? I'm going to drink less, right? So this is what we call psychologically adjusting to make something that is a temptation less desirable. So again, spend 1 minute and think about which of these 3 might work for you. All right, that's 1 minute. All right, let's briefly share and then we'll get to the very last point. So Tanaya, no pressure, but you got anything you want to say?
I said, like work.
The work play line,
Yes.
you want to learn how to divide those two? You feel like that would help you. Why would it help you?
Because I will, like I'll have a set amount of time, I'll set amount of time to work on the assignment, and then after that I'll take a break, and then I'll like watch the basketball game for a few minutes and go back to studying.
Yeah, good. And again, make sure it stays in different places. So that when you go and take your break is elsewhere. So that when you come back to your other space, you feel like you can focus again because it's not distracting at the same time. All right, wonderful. Let's go to the last one, which is instead of delay, we want to be smart. We want to be smart. First way to be smart is get into a routine. What that means is organize your time so that you're not just doing whatever comes to mind at any given moment in time, but you actually have scheduled out, for example, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. to study every night. Or if you come to Hill Hall, maybe it's after class at 1 o'clock, I'm going to spend from 1 to 4 o'clock studying until my 4 o'clock class. So this is what we call getting in a routine, creating a routine. Once you create a routine for yourself, you develop what's called habits, right? Now, habits are an interesting thing because when habits are developed, they also bypass the system too. They bypass your planning module and they go directly into automation mode. So what that means is if you get in a routine and you start developing habits, you don't even have to plan anymore because Thursdays from 1 to 4 p.m., where are you going to be? Right here, right? Studying. Mondays 8 to 10 p.m., where are you going to be? In your separated, quiet workspace without the TV nearby and no phone anywhere nearby you. So you already allocated that time and place. You are now free to actually do what you're supposed to do. So your routine does your work for you instead of you scrambling and going, should I go see what's new in the candy snack machine? Should I go see what game is on right now? Or should I do my work? That's going to be a hard one, right? No, 8 to 10 p.m., you're in your study room studying. That's what the routine is. And you never get away from it. Make sense? Number 2, find high energy moments. This is real important. Understand yourself and adjust to your strengths. Some people wake up and they're morning people and man, 6 a.m., after they brush their teeth and get ready and have breakfast, they're ready to go like gangbusters. So your time should be 6:45 to 8 o'clock would be a great time to do some super studying. All right, your high impact, difficult work, you can get that done in that hour or two. Maybe you're just a night owl and you don't get crank until midnight. Maybe that's just you. Now you have to think for yourself, is that healthy or unhealthy? But if it happens to be healthy and it's how your body does things, then maybe your best time is midnight to 2 a.m. And that's where you'll get your most difficult, challenging work done. Whatever the case it is, figure out what your high energy moments are in your day, in your week. The final one is the most impactful one, and it's also the hardest one, is to set these smaller, smarter goals. I talked about this earlier, right? You want to create that success spiral. But to do that, you have to be achievable and realistic, smaller things. But in general, when you set goals, they actually have to be measurable. What am I actually accomplishing when I take this step? I break it down into 10 check boxes like we talked about. Make sure each of your check boxes is getting you closer to your goal, your achievement. They've got to be specific. Don't just say, go on the internet. You know how many things are on the internet. You need to say, go on the internet to search for articles about topic XYZ. Specific. S-M-A-R-T, specific. And then timely. Make sure you're breaking it up so that you have enough time to get all of your specific measurable things done by the time you need to do them. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, because we're getting short on time, I'm going to let you do that one at home. I'm going to leave you with one last thought, and then we'll do our evaluation like we always do. My last thought is this: I am in control. I decide if procrastination is in charge, or if I am in charge. And I choose to be in charge. And I've written that at the bottom of your sheet with a few more words. This is your mantra. This has to be what you tell yourself every hour of every day to make sure that procrastination doesn't get the better of you. Who decides? Your phone or you? Who's in charge? You are, right? So if you constantly remind yourself that you are in control, you have the power to make a change, you will make a change. And with that, I thank you for coming today. I hope you got something out of it.